Alright, let's start with exactly what Pi Network announced and why it's creating such intense controversy. According to posts circulating through Pi communities, Pi Network claims that Pi Euro has been officially approved and is legally accepted in 19 out of 27 EU member states. The announcement frames this as a major regulatory milestone made possible by the newly implemented MiCA framework. Supporters are celebrating this as Pi finally reaching the legitimacy phase after years of development. Claim specifically references MiCA, which stands for Markets in Crypto Assets, the European Union's comprehensive regulatory framework for digital assets that officially activated recently. If accurate, this would represent monumental progress for a project that's faced relentless criticism about regulatory compliance and legitimacy. But here's where things get extremely problematic. Multiple European regulatory commentators and legal experts are urgently warning the community to exercise extreme caution because there is absolutely no evidence that any official EU regulatory authority has designated Pi Euro with legal tender status or regulated approval status. Let me be crystal clear about what MiCA approval actually requires. It's not something you can claim through community announcements or social media posts. MiCA provides a structured, formal path for asset registration that includes comprehensive consumer protection mechanisms, detailed issuer disclosure requirements, and official registration with recognized regulatory authorities. Any legitimate MiCA approval would appear in official EU registries authorization lists maintained by national financial authorities and formal documentation from regulatory bodies. Pi Network has not appeared in any of these recognized registries or authorization lists. Zero. None. Not a single official regulatory document confirms these claims. Without formal documentation from official EU institutions or national financial authorities, these circulating claims risk seriously misleading users about Pi's actual legal status, especially in jurisdictions that strictly enforce compliance requirements for digital assets marketed to the public. This isn't minor. This is the difference between legitimate regulatory approval and marketing narrative that could expose users to legal and financial risk. Now, let's examine how major platforms and exchanges are responding to these claims, because their reaction is extremely telling. Major cryptocurrency exchanges and data aggregators are subtly but unmistakably distancing themselves from narratives suggesting that Pi's presence on price tracking platforms equals regulatory recognition or endorsement. Data aggregators like CoinGecko and market tracking interfaces like Binance's public price displays simply reflect trading activity from third-party markets. They are not providing endorsements, verifying regulatory compliance, or confirming jurisdictional clearances. They're mechanically displaying data about trading activity that exists, regardless of regulatory status. Exchanges continue reminding users, often in fine print that most people ignore, that displayed prices for Pi frequently represent IOUs, wrapped versions, or unofficial markets rather than fully launched mainnet tokens with actual regulatory approval. This distinction is absolutely critical. When you see Pi prices on tracking platforms, you're often looking at speculative markets trading promises of future tokens, not actual regulated digital assets with confirmed legal status. The gap between community-driven excitement and the current regulatory or technical realities of Pi's ecosystem couldn't be wider, and exchanges know this. That's why they're carefully distancing themselves from legitimacy claims while still displaying price data. Think about what this means practically. If Pi actually had legitimate MiCA approval in 19 EU countries, major exchanges would be racing to list it properly with full regulatory compliance. Instead, they're keeping it at arm's length and issuing disclaimers about what those price displays actually represent. Quick pause here. If you appreciate analysis that investigates claims before accepting them at face value, do me a favor and smash that like button right now. And if you want to stay protected from misleading narratives in crypto, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're separating verified facts from marketing hype. Alright, let's continue with what this means for Pi's future. So, this controversy has created massive pressure on the Pi core team from multiple directions, and honestly, how they respond is going to be absolutely critical. The core team now faces urgent demands to provide transparency, accelerate KYC processing that's, been dragging on for years, and most importantly, clarify the actual roadmap toward open mainnet activation with verifiable milestones and timeline. As misinformation spreads through community channels, a lot of Pi users are calling for official communication that directly addresses regulatory pathways with specific documentation, token launch requirements with clear technical specifications, and the actual status of ecosystem integrations backed up by verifiable evidence. Here's the fundamental problem. The Pi core team has, well, historically communicated through vague announcements, community moderator messaging, and aspirational roadmaps without concrete delivery dates or verifiable progress metrics. That approach worked during the experimental closed ecosystem phase, but it absolutely does not work when making claims about regulatory approval in 19 European countries. Regulatory claims require official documentation, legal status requires government confirmation, cross-border approval requires formal authorization from multiple national financial authorities. None of this can be established through community posts or ecosystem builder announcements. Developers must manage expectations while reinforcing that sustainable adoption depends on compliance, security, and technical readiness, not speculative claims or viral marketing announcements that can't be independently verified. This increasing demand for clarity from the community underscores a fundamental shift in what Pi users are willing to accept. After years of promises, the community wants verifiable progress with official documentation, not viral announcements that regulatory experts immediately contradict. So what does this situation actually mean for people holding Pi or considering involvement with the ecosystem? First, understand that claiming regulatory approval without official documentation isn't just misleading marketing. It could have serious legal consequences for both the project and users. Regulators take false claims about legal status extremely seriously, especially when millions of users are involved. Second, the fact that exchanges are distancing themselves and displaying disclaimers should tell you something critical about their internal legal assessment. Exchanges have massive compliance teams evaluating regulatory risk constantly. When they won't fully embrace Pi despite community enthusiasm, that's a signal worth heeding. Third, European regulatory authorities specifically warning about unverified claims suggests they're monitoring the situation closely. If Pi continues making claims that regulatory bodies consider false or misleading, formal enforcement actions become increasingly likely. For Pi holders, the path forward requires demanding official documentation, not accepting community announcements as proof. If Pi Euro actually has a MiCA approval in 19 countries, there should be official registry entries, formal authorization letters from national financial authorities, and public documentation from EU institutions. Demand to see those documents. If Pi core team can't produce official documentation, then these claims should be treated as aspirational marketing rather than accomplished regulatory milestones. The distinction matters enormously for legal protection, regulatory compliance, and realistic expectations about what Pi can actually deliver. So there you have it. Crypto fam. Pi Network's claim about Pi Euro gaining approval in 19 EU countries has created a firestorm of controversy because there's zero official documentation supporting it. Regulatory experts are warning against accepting these claims. Exchanges are distancing themselves, and the Pi core team faces massive pressure to provide verifiable proof or retract exaggerated statements. This situation perfectly illustrates why independent verification matters more than community enthusiasm. Regulatory approval requires official documentation, not social media announcements. If this investigation helped you understand why skepticism about Pi's regulatory claims is warranted, show some appreciation by dropping a like on this video. Seriously, it helps protect others from potentially misleading information. And subscribe to TJ Crypto World if you want analysis that demands proof before accepting claims. I've also got a breakdown coming on 3 other projects making questionable regulatory claims that don't hold up under scrutiny. You'll definitely want to catch that investigation. Until next time, stay sharp, demand documentation, and remember, in crypto, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. This is TJ signing off. Let's stay protected together.